And we're live!
Live here in Edmonton, Alberta.
All right, here we are at 5 Minute Friday, hosted by Startup TNT. I'm Zach Storms.
And I'm Jillian Elizabeth.
And today our special guest is Ron Mills. How you doing?
Hello. It's perfect for me because I've only got 5 minutes. So let's go.
That's good. All right. Well, we're gonna keep it snappy, Ron.
A little bit. Yeah, there's so many questions.
That's a call to action to get the interview started. It's a 5-minute interview. I've got the timer, Ron. We're gonna set it. Now, I will say this for the audience. Nobody gets in trouble if we go over time. So if we're having a good time, we can do 6 minutes, 7, 8. All right, timer's on. What's the first question?
Well, Ron, I checked your LinkedIn account. I've heard about some little bits and pieces about what you do. You are running a company called Northernmost. And when I say running, I mean, it's just, you're the CEO. Tell me about what you do there. Like, tell us about Northernmost.
Sure. And so this is kind of a serial entrepreneurial thing for me. So Northernmost is making a machine, perfusion transporter for organs for transplant. And so it's the carrier shipper box that takes the things from the donor of the organ to the recipient of the organ and is in the chain of custody of all the clinicians and people in between. And so funny enough, and it's a weird little business, but I've been in it for over 20 years now.
Wow.
Northernmost is new though, so launched at the beginning of this year.
And what's the sort of improvement that you guys are going for in that process, the transfer from the donor to the receiver?
Yeah, the kidney is the only transplantable organ that is sent unattended. So it's shared, and there's a lot of pressure on people to share more, but really they're shared in a box of ice, so a cooler, static storage, and that's how kidneys are shared. And so what we wanted to do is make a pump, a perfusion transporter, which has proven benefits for outcomes and for safely prolonging the cold time and the distance. To have one that's truly transportable, that you can send unattended, so it goes anywhere the box of ice can go. And that's the basic failure of the previous device I launched in the early part of this millennium, which is a great product, the market leader, but you can't really send it anywhere. And even if you could, people don't want to. It's too expensive. It's too pretty. It's too fragile.
So could you in theory ship organs around the country or around the world with your system?
Yeah. And so basically what we want to make is a new shipper and a new logistical system to support that, so that you can send it, feel good about it, know that the machine's rugged enough for that trip. You can track it. Even you don't even have to own it. So we can take care of that. So you're kind of using these shippers in a much more efficient manner so that you can always send on the pump and everybody benefits. The patient benefits, it fits the modernized logistical system that's kind of being imposed on the world right now. And in my experience, the people who are working on things tend to fall short in terms of industrial design and engineering. It's not that big of a lift to do this and give this tool to people. But for some reason, people fall short on the kind of the thinking, planning, doing of making a better machine. So that's what we're working on.
Well, if we're not careful, we're going to spend the entire 5 minutes on question number 1. So let's keep going here. Ron. You know what? It's come to our attention that you're a fellow American, originally from Chicago, living here in Edmonton. Tell us, how'd you get here?
Actually, grew up in Detroit and went to Michigan and ended up in Chicago for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And so I was portable. I was discoverable by a startup up here.
Like your machine.
Yeah. A company, yes, I was pretty well known, and there's a company called Tivasol, and they kind of needed a redirection and needed a CEO connected to this world of transplant, which is a pretty peculiar market. And so I had insight into that. So I came up here, kind of turned around the team, refocused the product, and got us sold in the second year. So we got bought. Nice. And then together with our partners, we got capital, growth capital to kind of do everything they wanted to do. So all that happened in about the span of 3 years plus a couple months. And it set me up nicely for northernmost. But I came up here for that opportunity for Tivasol, which, you know, they're all still my friends and they're doing great and growing, thankfully. And so that's all set up. And by the end of it, I've been thinking of this thing for about 15 years. So I started up, you know, northernmost based off that success.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Well, that's awesome. So Tivasol is giving you the opportunity to do what you really want to do.
Yeah, and it gave me the excuse to make the decision to stay here. Like coming up here was easy. It was a great job, but
Right.
like to actually start up my next thing, I had to think about, you know, I can be anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But this is nicely set up.
Why stay in one of the northernmost cities in North America?
Totally. And yeah, if you call your
Wanna
kind
start a company named
To
Northern.
start a company called Northernmost. It makes sense.
Yeah,
It makes total
I mean,
sense.
Totally.
if you call it northernmost, you have to stay here. So
Okay.
So
the
I
clock
wanna-
is going. We
I
gotta
want to
keep
ask you
moving.
another question because we are now hitting that number. We chatted a little bit about the fact that you actually have a very interesting background. What you're doing a very niche thing that, like, I mean, who's met people who are in medical transplant devices? It's just incredible. But I heard you're a poet, like with a degree in English Lit from U Michigan, which is like amazing because I love U of M, go blue. And then you also have a background in music. And then, like, how did you get into this? Like, what an interesting field.
yeah, you know, when you're like a poet and musician in college, like doing what you want to do in terms of study, like I'm not a big proponent of, you know, especially undergraduate education as vocational training. And so I studied what I wanted to study, what I loved. A lot of science in there too. So I had that background. But I got a day job, like between undergrad and graduate school, I got a job in a consulting firm and it was healthcare. And it was 1983. And I've never done anything but healthcare, but I was a writer, editor. So it was relevant to literature. And that got me into healthcare. And then I just learned by osmosis through a bunch of really smart people in that business.
That is amazing. Without that background, I mean, without like the educational background, you were able to do that.
I think everything turns into writing at some point and storytelling.
Yep.
Absolutely. I agree with
It's
that.
all-
Well, speaking of storytelling, we like to tell the story of our startup community happy hour every single
Mhm.
Thursday in our blog. Ron, you've been a frequent visitor to the happy hour over the last couple of months. What keeps you coming back?
Yeah, especially lately, you know, I've used it, first of all, to like get out because socially, you know, I've been challenged since I moved up here a little bit. So I'm trying to come out of my shell a little bit, but also it's a good place to park appointments. So instead of trying to have all these coffees and calls through the week, if we're all in the startup ecosystem, you can say Thursday, it's like, let's just talk there. And so that's worked out really well. And it's been very rewarding, but just the energy of it, it's like, you know, it's worth going to because it just gives you a little pep in your step, you know?
I agree
Nice.
100%. I feel that way every Thursday. And I actually do the same thing. I tell people, let's chat at the happy hour. And there was actually someone there last night that told me I really had to talk to Ron. So it sounds like you're doing this. Sounds like you guys made an agreement ahead of time. We'll chat at the happy hour. So putting it
And
in
I
there.
just build it into my weekly schedule whenever possible. So it's great.
Great. It's like multi-networking there. One-stop shopping.
Okay, final question, Jillian. Let's take it home.
All right. Well, I'm just curious if you met someone like at the happy hour, perhaps a young entrepreneur who's interested in building like a company like yours in Alberta, like a health tech company, medical device company, that sort of thing. Like, what type of advice would you give them?
Yeah, you know, I always want to go to like Warren Zevon, eat, you know, like enjoy every sandwich. Like if I was talking to my younger self, I'm pretty good at that. I think for almost any startup idea, I'm always surprised at how many people have an idea and then they need to test whether there's a need for it. It's like, that seems backwards to me. And I know sometimes that works out, but I'd rather see somebody inspired by, I see a problem, I have a solution, I know the people who are hurting for this. That organic kind of backstory to a startup is much stronger. So I'd encourage people to find ideas that are like grounded in that, because that's what you'll be challenged on over and over and over again by capitalists, by your partners, by the market itself. And so that would be my advice. It's like, make sure you're solving a real problem.
Yeah, I hear that.
Mhm.
I've heard sort of a variation of that, which is make sure you're really passionate about the problem itself, not the solution.
Right.
Because that's what you got to work
Right.
on solving. That's what it keeps
And
you.
you're gonna have to sell the problem too. So.
Exactly.
absolutely.
Okay, I think we should end it here. We're at like 8 minutes, only 3 minutes over. Not a big deal,
Good.
Ron. This is a ton of fun. We are keeping our eye out for some exciting news from Northernmost at some point in the future, Ron. Keep on the
Coming.
happy hours, keep us informed. And maybe, hey, maybe one day, Ron, if it makes sense, join us at one of our investment summits, raise money for Northernmost from some local investors. We'd love to see that happen. And
happen.
if anyone in the audience wants to participate in one of our investment summits, the deadline to apply for our fall summit is Tuesday, September 20th, noon.
2022.
2022. We're raising $1 million for startups from across the prairies. And if you'd like to just hang out with us, meet people like Ron on a regular basis, and Jillian and myself, come to one of our happy hours here in Edmonton. We got in Calgary, we got in Saskatoon, we got in Regina. We also have it in Winnipeg. We're in 5 cities. Any final thoughts, Jillian, for Ron? Or
Oh,
it's-
Ron, and you know, one of these summits, perhaps like the finale or that sort of thing, maybe you want to come and bring a piano because I have heard a little bit of your piano and you're just brilliant. So we would love to hear you up on stage someday.
the hidden talents of the startup community.
It's
You've never
Just
seen.
bring the tip jar. I'll be there.
Okay, we'll end it here. So everybody enjoy your Fridays and your weekends. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
See you
Thank
soon.
you.